So I thought I'd take a moment and show you how I shoot with the Sony a6000. I did this with the Canon T5i last year, and it was a very popular video. I'm going to just briefly go through some of the things that the Sony offers you when you are setting up for a shot like this. Now, I found this kind of cool boggy spot with these logs that are getting covered in moss. The lighting isn't great though. The direction of the lighting is on the other side, and so these logs are really kind of backlit. But we're going to use this as an example anyway. So let's zoom into the camera back. All right, so you can see that the Sony is giving us a wealth of information around this display here. And if I wanted to, if it was bright sunlight or something, I could put my eye up here and notice how the LCD immediately turns off and gives us that ability to use the EVF. One of my complaints of this camera is that EVF is a little bit on the dull and lifeless side. The LCD is fine, especially in conditions like this. When it gets a little brighter, it's not the best. I'm in manual mode on the dial, which means that this little mystery dial back here changes my aperture, and you can see how that changes. The widest aperture I have available to me right now is 4.5, but I can zoom out a little bit and that will go all the way to 3.5. Not a huge difference, but a difference. Notice I have a little exposure meter down here. That is currently saying I'm one stop underexposed. My shutter speed is very high, so I'm going to rotate this dial on the back right here and bring my shutter speed down to something a little bit more appropriate for the scene. Now you can say that it's suggesting that I'm one stop or 7/10 of a stop overexposed. I'm going to get ISO, my ISO. I just pressed right on this wheel and that brought up the ISO as it's labeled. You can change the function of any of these though, and I'm going to rotate and bring this down to something a little bit more reasonable, probably around 200 or so would be good. And I'm going to press the middle button to select that. Now we're back underneath. I'm doing this in kind of a roundabout way, but it's showing you changing the dials of each of these things. I also would like to be a little bit closer, and my perspective should be a little bit nicer. So hang on here. All right, we're filling the frame a little bit more now. I went a little too far forward and the tripod legs just go right into the muck. I do need to overexpose this a little bit because down here in this foreground, the area that I kind of want to capture with all of the moss on the branches is dark. So I'm going to lower my shutter speed, and you can see that I've got these highlights going on here. It's showing me overexposed information. In the menu system, that is under zebras, and I can turn those off. And now if we come back, those are not there. So that's nice as a very quick visual way to tell how your exposure is doing. If I half press on the shutter button, you can see that it's focusing right there in that spot. If I press function, I'm currently in single shot AF mode. Oops. I can go back into this function. All of these you can assign to different functions. I'm going to come over here to the focus area and notice that I have wide, zone, center, and flexible spot. I do like flexible spot very much, and I've set it up so that when you press the center button, you can then easily move that spot around. And I'm just going to come down here because I want to focus in the foreground. And you know what? I can come down a little bit in my ISO because this is still a little overexposed. And somewhere right around there gives you an idea of the kind of shot that I'm looking for. And I'm going to go ahead and take that. Pretty straightforward. Now you have more options when you go into your function. You have your single shot, but right under here I wanted to go into your creative style. I was on vivid, but you can do shoot standard, neutral, a clear. Your clarity is bumped up. Deep, and I haven't played with all of these, but there they all are. Sunset, not quite appropriate. And back to standard. And then vivid again. Now, these do not apply to raw shots. I'm currently shooting just fine JPEG, so I want to change that by going into the menu, going all the way back to number 1, and choosing my quality to be raw plus JPEG so that I have that file size that I can work with if I want to, or the JPEGs straight out of the camera, which in a lot of cases on this camera look quite good. Over here I got a little face tracking on. That doesn't necessarily any usefulness, and it's going. And I also have the kind of dynamic range lighting on as well, and that is here Oh, I'm sorry, it's off actually. But you can turn this on, and this kind of tries to help in a scene like this and gives a little bit more, brings up the shadows a little bit more without blowing out the highlights as well. So I can take another shot there. Now let's swing the camera around. Now again, it's very interesting. To my eyes, there is a very clear green mossy carpet leading up through this little valley, very small valley. And on the back of the Sony, it's a little flat looking, even here in standard. Let's change that by going into function again and choosing vivid. And it's a little bit better, but I'm looking at the back of the camera I'm using to record, a 5D Mark III, and it's really having trouble picking that up from the camera. But we're going to continue on. So I think this also could be an interesting shot, and maybe an interesting Instagram. If I go into menu and I go to my aspect ratio, I do not have a 1:1 aspect ratio. My only options are 3:2 or 16:9. So you Instagram folks, you're just going to have to use that grid view that you have here to kind of figure out where your square is, and you can see that there it is. Oh, and it went off because it thought that my finger was my eye going up to the viewfinder. And so now I think my focus is about where I want it to be, but you know what? I do want to increase my aperture a little bit, and that means I'm going to increase my ISO a little bit as well. Oops, my ISO a little bit as well. So that I can get this to be as bright as I want and a nice clean depth of field from front to back. And I'm going to go ahead and take this picture. Pretty straightforward. Now, if I wanted to share this picture that I just took to my phone in case I wanted to Instagram it, and then you can see some of the green there and that, I can press this function button. When playback is on and that function button is pressed, I have it assigned to send a smartphone. This camera, the Sony a6000, is quite customizable, and you can set these different buttons to do different things based on the mode you are in. And I'm going to say go ahead and send this image. All right, so now I can bring up my smartphone, make sure the Wi-Fi connects to that device. Yeah. It's connecting, and while it's connecting, I can go over and open the Play Memories mobile app. It's found the device, it's connected via Wi-Fi, and it's moving that file over. I believe I've asked it to move over the full resolution, so you can see that it's taking a little bit longer to copy that file over. And then there it is on the phone. And you can see that you see a little bit more green there. And then of course I can happily post-process that with something like Snapseed or built-in Google Photos, square it up and send it off to Instagram. So that was just a quick look at shooting with the Sony a6000. A couple different features that you can get into. I'm going to have another more complete video that kind of walks through the menu system and briefly touches on each of the items. If you've got any questions about this camera, you just leave a comment down below and I'd be happy to answer them. Thanks so much for watching, and if you appreciate videos like this, please take a moment and subscribe. That helps me. Thank you.